Okay, so it's our designated time for questions and answers, and I guess first day is often like this, that nobody from the Zoom conference or the online conference has submitted a question. We just got one in the bowl today, so we'll start with that, and then assuming that I won't take 45 minutes to answer one question, we can have an opportunity for people who are here to, if something else comes up in the meantime, to please ask questions. Otherwise, if there aren't any, then we'll just continue to sit quietly until 4:30. So the question, my son got leukemia, blood cancer. Ever since, I've been hurrying practicing more Dhamma, 8 precepts, 5 precepts, meditation, donation, etc., in order to reduce the pain that myself and my family are suffering. I hope my son and all beings will be better every day, and may the good deeds will help to free everyone from not being born back again. And signed, Alex. Is Alex in here? Alex? No? Oh, it's Alex. Okay. Well, it's a tough one. I think, probably one of the toughest experiences that a person can have is when a child gets ill, particularly with a very challenging illness, because the bond between a parent and a child is probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest, bonds that there is. And it also goes against what we think is the way the world should work, that, we know that people get sick and have to face these life-challenging situations, but we think that, it should be the other way around, that it's the people who have lived longer, like aging parents, that's more proper with the way nature works. And so that when it's a child, particularly a young person, we think, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. So and then when it's, blood relative child, or very close, then it becomes even more challenging to say, how do I work with this? So for sure, it can be and should be a wake-up call to take a deeper look at life and life, what challenges bring to life, and to kind of look at where we can help change our own lives in order to be able to be with this. And certainly taking a close look at our precepts and how we live our life, and practicing generosity and kindness, and starting to look inside at the mind with the meditation. These are all good ways to respond to this kind of challenge. And we hope that that things will get better, and that whatever treatments and medicines that the medical science can offer, we hope that those will do their thing, and that our friends and family who have these kinds of problems, these illnesses, we hope that they can then live longer and be comfortable and have a more enjoyable life. And we do it with all the best and kindness, kind of good intentions that we can muster. And hope that everyone can do that. And it's also good to realize that, sometimes the best we can do doesn't always work. And there's a old, very, in Buddhist circles anyway, a well-known phrase that kind of sums up a lot of the practice and what it is to be like a human being, and also kind of the core ingredient to be able to reduce and eliminate the suffering in our lives. And I think I'm not sure where it originated, if it originated with this particular way of phrasing it with Bhante Gunaratana, or if he was just the first place I read it in one of his books. But basically, the phrase that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So that's a good one to just keep in mind when really difficult things come across our path. That there's a whole lot just by being a human being, being in this world, even a non-human being, but particularly as a human being, a whole lot of difficulty and painful situations, whether they're physical or emotional, that are unavoidable. It's kind of part of what we signed up for when we took rebirth again. And to try and fight that inevitability of pain or difficulty just brings on more complication. Doesn't mean we don't do anything or just get indifferent and say, oh, well, that's the way it is. Not at all. We do what we can do. But we realize that these are part and parcel of being a human being. Sickness, eventually looking at the fact that these bodies won't last forever, that they'll pass on. This is part of nature. It's part of the way things are. And we have some control over our lives and what we put into our bodies and what we put into our minds. But there are certain laws of nature that follow the course, and particularly with this human body. Sometimes it gets older and sometimes it doesn't, but it still will get sick and it will pass away. So just learning to kind of get our hearts around this hard truth, but it is a realization or an understanding that doesn't mean you will escape painful situations and have to work with them the best you can and open your heart to these things. But it can reduce the sense of injustice or wrongness with it. Because it really, it can't be any other way in the long run. And it's that way for everybody. We all have our unique situations that we're dealing with, and again, the illness of a child, one of our children, is particularly poignant, particularly difficult. And it's also a part of nature. Sometimes it happens that way and we don't know why. And oftentimes people go through a lot of questioning as to, why is this happening? But it's kind of one of those questions that doesn't have a very good answer, if any answer at all, and kind of just gets us wound up even more. So asking why may not be so fruitful. But dealing with, well, how is it, rather than why is it, asking ourselves, how is it? And just allowing it to be the way it is. The reactions that we have, the ups and downs. I'm sure have been ups and downs in this particular situation. Some days would be good, some days would be bad. Some periods would be, there would be an increase in physical well-being, and others a decreased. But to just see if we can be in the present with whatever it is that's happening, and realizing that the emotional reactions and the feelings and the sometimes the sadness, sometimes not, these are all okay. There really isn't any wrong way to feel. It all belongs. That's true for all of us in all of our situations. There is no wrong emotional reaction to these kinds of things in grief or difficulty. They are what they are based on, our own past conditioning and just being a human being. We're sensitive. We've got sensitive bodies and sensitive minds, and these things arise, these feelings and difficulties and emotions. So it's not all pleasant. Much of it is unpleasant, but it's all, in a sense, it's all okay. It's what our inheritance is as human beings. So just allowing ourselves to feel whatever it is that's coming up and doing our best, establishing our intentions to do our best, taking advantage of whatever medical treatments there are, and just being open to being with whatever nature provides to us. And to try and accept when there's the pain, but not add that extra layer of resistance, the resistance to the way things are is what creates the suffering that the Buddha talks about. That's what we can eliminate. We don't have to add that second layer of resistance. Takes a lot of work, but that is the possibility. And to enjoy the moments when they do come that are good ones, the ones where, the heart opens, and the caring and the love in the family and in the friends, when that space opens up, and to realize that that's actually a really important potential in the human realm, that even in the most difficult circumstances, if we allow the heart to open with them, then there's a lot of love and compassion that human beings can experience, and to be open to that. So, I don't know if there are any more questions, but if people have anything else on their minds, or something similar or something different, this would be a good time to raise your hand and ask a question, or if not, then we can also sit for a while, but first just give an opportunity for anybody to anything along Dhamma practice lines. Yeah.
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
I thought of it when Lumpur mentioned that he had sat for a year retreat at Chithurst, and I know that you've been on retreat for a long time. And so my question is, how do you and how does one sustain practice and commitment over time, over such a time?
A time of retreat.
A time of something where you're saying, where one is saying, I'm going to do a year retreat.
Yeah.
And that feels so much bigger than a week or a month or 10 days. And I know it can look very different. A year retreat everyone can look different, but yeah, that's my question. How can one sustain that? And perhaps it's no different than a 2-week retreat, but somehow I think it might be.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's been about 8 months, I think, that since I got back from the Hermitage last fall and dipped into this long period of retreat and just coming out now, so not quite a year, but 8 months, 9 months. And yeah, and really my first opportunity to have this kind of length of time. So it's been really precious. I think, one factor going into it that makes it sustainable is to not do it, not do it too early on in your practice. To, not, after a few months of getting introduced to the practice, say, hey, I'm going to go do a year of solitary retreat, because the mind might not be quite ready yet. So, making sure that you're very well grounded in sila, that you've been following precepts for a good long time. So I figure 20 plus years of being in the monastery helps with that. Also having the opportunity to engage to some extent as needed and as wished for. I think that, for me anyway, if I had made a vow of not talking to anybody or not having any kind of contact at all and going into a real total silent mode, that it's just not part of my personality so much. There's a bit of human contact that I find very useful. So I didn't impose a super strict standard on that for myself for this period of time. And on several occasions, it was very helpful, very, very handy that I get to share the day room with Luang Pa, because we had pretty much contact every day. But then there were some special times when I would request, and he would offer some time to just really say, okay, how's the practice going, what's going on, and receive some support and suggestions. So having that kind of opportunity where you have a teacher, or at least Kalyanamitta, to have regular contact with is, I think, very, very important, unless you're, extremely independent in your practice. So those are kind of some important, I think, factors for me in sustaining that long term. And then just to realize that, it's not going to be a picnic all the way through. It's that accepting that, as I was talking about earlier in a different context, but accepting that the pain is inevitable. Not just bodily pain, but the when you have that reduced level of input, you really get to see how relentlessly crazy the mind can be. and it's just sort of like, okay, well, now I've just spent the past 2 weeks thinking about this particular problem or issue, whereas before I wouldn't have noticed it so much. It's just sort of like everything becomes much more, pronounced. So just being able to realize that and kind of roll with that, and realize, and just reflecting over and over again that it's not who you are. These are just, habits of mind that have been ingrained for how many lifetimes, do we, in inconceivable number of lifetimes that these habits, patterns have been laid down. So, you're not going to, you can't expect them to evaporate quickly. And to realize that, oh gosh, maybe they'll never go away, but that's not so important. What's important is how we hold them and how we realize them, or what we realize them to be. And, learning how to still the mind enough to be able to step back and separate this identification with them, because at some point, if you're honest with yourself and you're strong enough with yourself in a situation like this, you're just going to say, okay, well, this isn't going to go away. I better stop wishing for it to, otherwise I'm just going to increase the amount of suffering in my life. If I keep on thinking, okay, if I just do this, then it will go away. Even if I just, okay, I'll accept it, I'll hold it, it'll be fine. Everything will, it's whatever is fine. But if you're thinking in the back of your mind, so then it will go away, then it's gotcha already. So you have to really allow yourself to be honestly open to the fact that that may not change, this particular mental habit or way of seeing and experiencing the world may not, it's a pattern, part of what we would maybe call a personality pattern. But again, that's not where the liberation is. The liberation is just not identifying with it and not believing it, and not taking it as who I am or something that is mine that I shouldn't have. Any kind of form of self-identification with these mind states tends to just lock them more in place. So really working over and over again to see the difference between the mind, the knowing, and the object of the mind, to really let those separate out and let them just be where they are without having to feel like they shouldn't be there. So that's kind of a perspective that I think that one needs to have to work through, a long retreat on one's own and stay sane. And then, as you do that, things do lighten up, because it's the suffering and the pain of attachment to whatever it is that's going on that really is the root of the suffering. So that the more you're able to get it in these like little bits and pieces and times of letting go and not identifying with them, then gradually, the whole mood of the mind, the whole perceptual experience starts to soften and open and widen, and that, it's not so much that the defilements, don't try and make their way through or make a challenge, but that the space you've created for them is so much bigger that the impact is just not quite nearly as strong. So you're not working to get rid of things, you're working to expand your ability to hold them or be with them and let them have their own natural lifespan. and that the space you hold them in just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, so that it just, the impact is not nearly so overwhelming. Sarana.
I just was reflecting on something I heard recently, which what you just said reminds me of, that Norman Fisher, who's a Zen priest, who probably already said recently, I didn't hear him say it, but it was reported to me, that he said that he now adds a grief practice to his practice every day.
Mm.
And because he found that he's older and things are falling apart, and
Yeah.
people are dying and the world's a mess, that he was finding that he was constantly pushing away grief. And so he just intentionally includes a grief practice.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but it sounds like a really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of like turning towards all of it rather than trying to turn away from it or shut it out. It's that just the words that you used, include. You know, we want to include all of this stuff, right? You know, proliferate with it. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a great practice. Yeah, and it all has to be in balance. You know, some people can get overwhelmed and stuck in grief, you know, and kind of. But that's when you're starting to move into it with identification rather than with just clear knowing. So you have to always have that primary faculty of, or that practice of, looking at the effect that it's having. Is how I'm attending to this increasing suffering or decreasing suffering. Wise attention, and constantly reflecting on that and asking ourselves, is this wise attention or is this unwise attention? Is it resulting in wholesome mind states or is it resulting in unwholesome mind states? So that we have that constant checking of ourselves to make sure that we've got benchmarks to measure it against, to make sure we're not getting off on the wrong track with whatever it is.
Probably by using it as an object, one could have less identification, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. And or just while you're contemplating whatever it is that you're contemplating, knowing that that's what you're doing. Yeah. On purpose.